Well, first of all, I want to say thank you to Albert Vexler. I don't know if Albert is in the room, but I want to say thank you. Give Albert a hand for his leadership and everything else. And I'm going to step right into my comments here and want to say how good it is to be together in this place with such wonderful men and women of God that truly believe in the power of the Holy Spirit. That's what this whole world needs. Amen. I'm going to talk with you, and I look forward to hearing from the treasurer of Mississippi. I know you're excited to have him here as well. But tell you a little bit about who we are and focus a little bit on the anti-BDS legislation here for you today. Number one, I was elected to the Arkansas State Senate in 2010. I was the first Republican since the Civil War to win in that district. And I was part of one of the last states in the South to finally go over to the right, and happy to have our wonderful new governor, Sarah Huckabee Sanders, that's in place there. She loves Israel. And so I want to focus really on our efforts and our work with Israel for my comments here today. But I do want to say something and how wonderful it was for me to hear that beautiful ministry in Israel standing up for the pro-life issue. I really, really appreciate that. I actually passed the very first heartbeat bill in the country in 2013, so it was so beautiful to hear this here today. So let's talk about legislation. Number one, how many of you can raise your hand and say you know your state senator or your state representative in your home state? Not everybody. Well, I want to encourage you to do that. Because as broke as Washington, D.C. has been for the last several years, most of what gets done in this country, whether it's pro-life legislation or pro-Israel legislation, happens to be in your states. Do you understand? Because you see the friction that we have and the fight that we have in Congress. And so all across this country, there are 7,383 state representatives and state senators. And all of those people meet in their state houses, and they have the ability to pass legislation that can affect this issue as well as many others. While I was in the Arkansas Senate in 2017, I actually carried the bill that authorized not only our state treasurer, but also every city, every county, and every municipality to invest in Israel bonds if they so choose. That's number one. In addition, we passed in that same year what you know is anti-BDS legislation. Senator Bart Hester, Representative Jim Dotson passed that legislation, and I was one of 29 senators out of 35 that voted for that legislation. You may have heard something about it or read something about it in the news. After that, the ACLU, remember this, the ACLU sued the state of Arkansas, representing the Arkansas Times, because our legislation said if you do business with the state of Arkansas, you have to actually certify, you've got to check a box that you do not boycott the state of Israel and you do not do business with anybody that boycotts the state of Israel. We got sued over that. That case went to the 8th Circuit, and they upheld the Arkansas law, and in 2023, the United States Supreme Court refused an appeal, so that is the law, not only in our state, but the highest law that's been passed. And so, in terms of what you can do, and I believe if I've got this right, yes, looky there, it worked. I wanted you to see, this actually comes, you can see this map yourself from Newsweek that was printed recently. And these are states with restrictions on Israel boycotts. I'm happy to say that our neighbor to the east, Mississippi, is one of the red states that have passed legislation. If I've got my numbers right for you, 34 states in this country either have passed legislation or the pink slide, the pink states, they have had an executive order that has said that they take a stand against BDS attempts in their states. What I'm sorry to see is that we have 16 states in the country that have done nothing. And so my comments today are, what can we do about this? How can we change this? Well, it so happens that in 2019, I was happy to be a part of forming the first National Association of Christian Lawmakers in the country. It formed August of 2020. Since that time, if we had our map up here, we now have members and supporters in all 50 states, and in 35 states we have a state senator or a state representative that actually chairs in that state. In the state of Mississippi, it's Senator Kathy Chisholm. In the state of Texas, Representative David Cook. In Florida, Senator Dennis Baxley. I could go on and on. Since that time, that entity, which unites local, state, and federal elected officials together, we talk about all of the major policies affecting this country, but we do it from a biblical worldview. It's been written about us. If you want to see what the left thinks of us, just Google Rolling Stone, Rapert, my last name, you're going to find what the left thinks about us. They don't like it that we stand up for God and country, and we believe that the Bible is correct when it says, blessed is the nation whose God is the Lord. So, in addition to that, it's not just an association, it's just not a prayer group. I go to all of them, I love them, I encourage you to go to more. But the NACL is the only faith-based para-legislative group in the country. Now this is in the weeds a little bit. I'm sure that my colleague here to the left knows that when you get involved in the state legislature, you quickly find out about ALEC. Who knows what that is? American Legislative, just a few, American Legislative Exchange Council. You have NCSL, that's the National Conference of State Legislators. So all of these people get elected and they immediately get invited to these groups so they can learn about legislation and what to do and how to pass it. Well, the void there is there was no entity of that nature that openly discussed things from a biblical worldview. We thought that was a void that needed to be filled. So Governor Mike Huckabee, Tony Perkins, former Congressman Bob McEwen, even Andrew Womack and Billy Brown were on the National Advisory Board of the National Association of Christian Lawmakers. We have a large group. You can look that up at ChristianLawmakers.com. Here's where I want to end on my comments about Israel. We formed 7 working committees that take testimony, takes witnesses to talk about issues. Since they were formed, they've passed 36 model bills and model laws and ordinances that have been passed in many of their jurisdictions where they reside. In those jurisdictions, in addition to what we've done, many of our members have carried anti-BDS legislation. One of our members in Ohio is the State Treasurer Robert Sprague. He's invested in Israel bonds, as this gentleman's going to talk about. And so we formed of those working committees what's called the America-Israel Committee. That is the only para-legislative group out of all of them that has a standing committee on America-Israel relations. We do honestly believe that blessed are those who bless Israel and cursed are those who curse Israel. We forever have to stand for that relationship. And so I wanted to show this to you, and I'm going to end my remarks so that the treasurer has time to visit with you today. It's what do we do from this point? Well, in the NACL, they have passed resolutions of support immediately after October the 7th and that horrible, horrible attack that we now all know too well. The NACL came out publicly in support of Israel. I was in Israel my first time in 2013. I had never been there before, but I had passed a resolution in the state of Arkansas that said that we needed to stand with Israel as Hamas was lobbing rockets, even at that time, into the state of Israel. A group that I really didn't even know about. Some of you may laugh. I was brand new in the legislature. A group called AIPAC reached out to me. And they said, Senator, have you ever been to Israel? I said, no, I haven't. They said, well, we've seen this resolution. We want you to go. And so I went and I got introduced in color, walking through the Holy Land. And I will tell you what's very interesting is that when I got there, I felt like I was actually at home. And I know many of you, how many of you have been to Israel? Probably most of this group. And so I went there. And over time, God began working on me. But something I did, at the time I didn't know it was going to be that significant, but I picked up this stone from Jerusalem. And I've carried it in my pocket every single day since 2013. It reminds me to pray for the peace of Jerusalem. Former Consul General Eitan Levon from Houston actually came, and I was to introduce him to our senators, and we were talking. I said, oh, Eitan, I've got this rock in my stone. I wanted to show you about it. He grabbed it from me and he said, Senator, in our tradition, this means you're a messenger, but it also means you cannot be harmed. I said, would you please tell everybody that when I introduce you out there on the Senate floor? But I carry this because it reminds me to talk about the importance of the Israeli relationship. The NACL, in addition to the resolutions that we've passed, we want to make a commitment here today. And we're happy to work with people like CUFI, which I know many of you know, Christians United for Israel and others. In fact, the gentleman that just spoke up here mentioned this meeting to you Tuesday. Tony Perkins invited me to be there. We'll be there for that coalition. But I want you to know that we're going to do our best to work on these other 16 states. Will we win all of them and be able to pass anti-BDS legislation with our legislators there? Maybe not. But you know what? It's worth the effort to take a stand. Don't you believe that? So we're going to do that. Another thing that I want to say, and I'm going to turn it over to my friend here now. If any of you, I'm going to be here until tomorrow before we go to DC. And so be happy to meet with you, tell you more about the NACL. But I want you to know that another thing is very important to me. The sovereign state of Israel has a right to exist. And they should not be forced to give up 1 inch of their sovereign ground anytime, any place. And we believe in one sovereign state. So another thing that we hope to do is to begin to take testimony. Maybe some of you will come and give that testimony. Our next meeting is in December. Charlie Kirk is headlining an event. You'd be welcome to come and give testimony. Hopefully by the first of the year, as the legislatures begin to convene, we will have resolutions that will be filed at state capitals all over this country that says the state of Israel has a right to exist. Jerusalem is the capital of Israel, and one state is what they should be allowed, just like the rest of our nations. God bless you. With that, I'll give you our treasurer from Mississippi.
Thank you. Those were great words. Let's give them another round of applause. I'm McRae. I am the treasurer from Mississippi. I appreciate it. As treasurer, I never thought I'd be speaking to a group of you all like this, but we have a very important part to play in Israel and the finances of Israel. But I'm going to repeat myself what you just said. I can't believe we live in a world where there are actually people who think that Israel does not have a right to defend itself from its enemies, that Israel does not have a right to actually exist. And to me, that as a scholar of history, as a scholar of learning that part of the world, that always has confused me growing up, and it has confused me more as I've gotten older. And to hear a presidential candidate think that there should ever be a two-state solution is beyond my comprehension. And I wanted to start off with that before I get to how Mississippi is involved with Israel, because honestly, I bet everybody in this room is wondering, what in the world does Mississippi have to do? A barely 3 million person state. What do y'all think? Here we are, right there. And if anybody didn't know, we're more famous for the river than we are. Anyway, what do we do to get involved? As far as BDS goes, and it has been very important for what we've done. We are not, let me back up. The Treasury is the investment wing of the state. I am the Bank of Mississippi. Every investment, every bank account flows through my coffers in some way or form or fashion. So I handle everything like that. So we are not allowed to invest in any company that does not invest with Israel or does not believe Israel should exist. Long-standing tradition of ours, and it will continue way into the future. The next is we have something called the Iran Investment Act. So any investments that we had in Iran, can't have those either. So those are gone. So we don't do that. And it goes one step further than that. Our pension, or what's called PERS, Public Employment Retirement System, or pension, is not allowed to invest in investments that don't believe in Israel. They're not allowed to invest in either, and they're also forced to divest from Iran. So those are big parts. Me personally for BDS, I have signed on to many letters. I have attacked an investment firm called Morningstar. Some of you all may know who Morningstar is. I was a young treasurer. I had just gotten into elected office, and it came across my desk that Morningstar, who we did business with, past tense, did business with, was attacking Israel and believed that they did not have a right to exist or had a very anti-Semitic words. I immediately pulled all our money out of Morningstar, and I signed a letter condemning them of what they had done, and I made the news on that. So here I am, first couple of months, COVID happens, I tap Morningstar, this is going great, isn't it? It's fun times. Next, what I decide to do is I go after Ben and Jerry's. If y'all remember Ben and Jerry's, and well, good thing for me, I never liked Ben and Jerry's. So that was not as hard, but I did it because I believe firmly that they had no right to be saying what they had to say and what their parent company had to say about the people of Israel and about the nation of Israel. And that was utterly ridiculous to me. So boycotted Ben and Jerry's. Ben and Jerry's in my house, much to my children's chagrin, but we like Bluebell ice cream, if you know what that is. So, besides other BDS legislation we've done in Mississippi, one of the main things we have done in Mississippi, and Israel and Mississippi have a very unique relationship, and I'll get a little bit more detailed into that in a second. In 2018, we passed the Israeli Defense Act. And what that allowed me to do, or my predecessor to do, is to invest in Israeli bonds. And Israeli bonds go to helping the infrastructure of Israel through our buying bonds in Mississippi. And at the time, it was something new for us, so we only dipped our toe into it. We put a limit on how much we could do, 20 million, and it would expire in 2024, this year. And so it comes to, and it passed fairly okay in the legislature at the time, and Republicans loved it, other people did not. And it comes up this year, and I'd already been thinking about whether or not what to do with it. I've been approached by several of the Israeli bond companies and things, and I wanted to extend it, but I wanted to do something more. And this was before October 7th. And I'm sitting in my office watching the news, and October 7th happens. And as tragic and awful as that is, I remember it actually affected me deeply. It was something that really affected me deeply, and I won't kind of go into that. I remember being 20 years old, and I'm sure a lot of y'all remember being 20 years old and wanting to go have fun. The world is stressful, the world is complex, want to go and do something to kind of release, so you go to a concert. And here these young men and women go to a concert, and they're savagely, brutally mutilated or taken hostage. And to me, that is just the most heinous thing I could think of. These 20-year-olds just want to go and have a little fun, just forget the world just for a couple hours, and they can't even do that. So I started working, our legislation meets in January, and I started working in October. I said, I want to increase the Israeli bonds. I went to our lieutenant governor, our Speaker of the House, and certain other legislators, and go, I want to increase the Israeli bonds. But on top of that, I don't want to have a cap on it. I don't want there to be a time limit on it. There is no expiration date. I don't want that. And that was a pushback, but we got it. And so I am proud to say on July 1st, Governor Tate Reeves of Mississippi signed a new Israeli Bond Act where we can invest $50 million with no time limit left on it for the foreseeable future. So we're very proud of that. I do this not out of charity, because I don't believe in using taxpayer dollars as charity. I use this because Israel, as I said earlier, Israel and Mississippi have a really unique relationship. There's a company in Columbus, Mississippi called Stark Aerospace Industries. They actually developed the missiles that are in the Iron Dome currently being used to defend Israel. We also have used our Raytheon is based in Mississippi. We have used, Israel has used Raytheon technology for radar equipment in Jerusalem and also stopping missile attacks in and around Jerusalem and Israel. But also medically, there have been several Israelis who've come over and helped at the University Medical Center in Jackson, who have progressed our medicine further and helped innovate, and actually stayed in Mississippi and taught a new generation of Mississippians and young men and women how to be better doctors, how to be better people in general. And that is our complex yet unique relationship I think we have with Israel and what we do. And we will continue in Mississippi as long as I'm treasurer to support Israel and to support Israel going forward for anyone after me as treasurer. Now I mentioned earlier, and I'll close on this, it was an easy vote to get the Israeli bonds passed. It was more complex in 2018, but easier in 2024. Every single Republican in Mississippi voted to do it. Every single one. So if you go and look, they all did it. I am embarrassed to say some of my friends who are Democrats didn't even show up to vote that day. They didn't show up, or they outright voted no, or walked out when the vote was being handled. To me, that is disgusting. That is disgraceful, and that, at least put your name on the record. Don't walk out. Just say what you really want to say. Say what you really want to say. Don't hide behind an absentee vote. Just say it. And that is what's happening in this nation, and that is what's going to happen as we go forward. If we do not elect a Republican president, if we do not elect a Republican Senate, which is equally as important, and we try to keep the House with a better majority. So with that, I appreciate y'all very much letting me speak and say what Mississippi is doing.